Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope everyone is fine and is in a good health. I'm Asma Kamran. We are continuing our chapter circulation, which is chapter number 12 in your book. Today we will learn about electrocardiogram, blood vessels, that is arteries, veins, and capillaries, vascular pathways, pulmonary circulation, systemic circulation, and coronary circulation, and hepatic portal system. What is electrocardiogram? The electrical impulses that pass through the conduction system of the heart during the cardiac cycle can be recorded as an electrocardiogram or ECG. In the previous lecture, you learned about cardiac cycle, that is the contraction and relaxation of different chambers of the heart for the pumping of the blood. It is recorded on the surface of skin using an instrument called the electrocardiograph, and ECG represents reflection of waves designated as P, Q, R, S, and T, which are produced during the specific events of the cardiac cycle. This is electrocardiogram, and you can see that electrical impulses which are generated in the heart, they are detected with the help of a machine, that is electrocardiograph, and is recorded in the form of electrocardiogram. This figure shows the P, Q, R, S, and T wave. P wave shows the atrial depolarization. Depolarization is when the electrical system of the heart stimulates myocardial cells. Myocardial are the muscles of the heart. So when the heart or the myocardial cells of the heart are stimulated due to electrical impulses, depolarization occurs, resulting in a contraction of the stimulated heart muscle. So depolarization results in the contraction of the chambers of the heart. At rest, the cardiac cells are considered polarized, and you are familiar with this term, polarization. And repolarization is that when the depolarization is over and the chamber is starting to relax. In simple words, depolarization is a change in the charges across the membrane of the myocardial cells, which then result in contraction of that part of the heart. And when contraction is over, depolarization occurs and repolarization, or the chamber or that part of the heart starts to relax, that is repolarization. So the P wave represents atrial depolarization. QRS complex represents the ventricular depolarization, and this is the time when the atrium are repolarizing, and the T wave represents the ventricular repolarization. PR is the interval, or it is the time from the P wave to reach the QRS, or it is also the time for the sinoatrial depolarization. You know, sinoatrial node, which is present in the auricle, and that starts the stimulus, and the QRS complex indicates the depolarization of the ventricles. This is the time when the ventricles are in systole, or they start contraction, and the blood is ejected out through aorta, then arteries, arterioles, and then to capillaries, to all parts of the body. ST segment, or ST, is the period or time between the completion of ventricular depolarization and the start of the ventricular repolarization. So T wave is produced by ventricular repolarization, or when the ventricles are relaxing. So in simple word, P wave represents excitation that occurs just before the contraction of atrium, and this is started by the stimulus from SA node. And second wave, that is QRS, occurs before the ventricular contraction. This is the depolarization of the ventricles. And the third wave, or T wave, occurs just before the relaxation of the ventricles. So this is ventricular repolarization. This figure again shows the P wave, that is the depolarization of the atrium in response to the SA node stimulus, or the stimulus generated by the SA node, and PR interval. It is the time during which stimulus from SA node is conducted to AV node, or stimulus from SA node travels to AV node. And this is the time when the atrium are relaxing and the blood from the atrium is pumped to the ventricle. There is a slight deflection, that is Q, then a spike R, and then again this deflection S. This is the time when the stimulus from SA node travels to AV node, that is atrioventricular node, and the depolarization of the ventricles occur, or the stimulus reaches to the ventricles, so the ventricles, they start contraction. Then this ST segment, this is the segment when the ventricles are contracting, atrium are relaxing. And when ventricles are contracting, the blood is pumped into the aorta and then arteries, arterioles, to all parts of the body. And T wave is that when the ventricles are repolarizing, or ventricles, they start relaxation. And this is the time when P wave starts again, that the atriums, they are depolarized and start to contract.
The cardiac conduction system consists of the following components: the sinoatrial node, or SA node, located in the right atrium near the entrance of the superior vena cava. This is the natural pacemaker of the heart. It initiates all heartbeat and determines heart rate. Electrical impulses from the SA node spread throughout both atria and stimulate them to contract. The atrioventricular node, or AV node, located on the other side of the right atrium, near the AV valve. The AV node serves as electrical gateway to the ventricles. It delays the passage of electrical impulses to the ventricles. This delay is to ensure that the atria have ejected all the blood into the ventricles before the ventricles contract. The AV node receives signals from the SA node and passes them onto the atrioventricular bundle, AV bundle, or bundle of His. This bundle is then divided into right and left bundle branches, which conduct the impulses toward the apex of the heart. The signals are then passed onto Purkinje fibers, turning upward and spreading throughout the ventricular myocardium. Electrical activities of the heart can be recorded in the form of electrocardiogram, ECG, or EKG. An ECG is a composite recording of all the action potentials produced by the nodes and the cells of the myocardium. Each wave or segment of the ECG corresponds to a certain event of the cardiac electrical cycle. When the atria are full of blood, the SA node fires. Electrical signals spread throughout the atria and cause them to depolarize. This is represented by the P wave on the ECG. Atrial contraction, or atrial systole, starts about 100 milliseconds after the P wave begins. The PQ segment represents the time the signals travel from the SA node to the AV node. The QRS complex marks the firing of the AV node and represents ventricular depolarization. Q wave corresponds to depolarization of the interventricular septum. R wave is produced by depolarization of the main mass of the ventricles. S wave represents the last phase of ventricular depolarization at the base of the heart. Atrial repolarization also occurs during this time, but the signal is obscured by the large QRS complex. The ST segment reflects the plateau in the myocardial action potential. This is when the ventricles contract and pump blood. The T wave represents ventricular repolarization immediately before ventricular relaxation, or ventricular diastole. The cycle repeats itself with every heartbeat.
Now the uses of electrocardiogram or ECG. A normal ECG indicates that the heart is functioning properly. If there is any change, this shows there is some disorder or something wrong with the conducting system of the heart. So ECG is used to detect cardiac arrhythmias. Arrhythmias means irregular heartbeat and conduction defects. It is also used to diagnose and localize myocardial hypertrophy, that is increase in the size of heart. Ischemia, that is a deficiency of blood in different parts of the body, due to which the pumping of the heart would be affected. Infarction, that is decrease in oxygen content or which is supplied to the cells of the heart. Or if there is any electrolyte imbalance in the body or toxicity of certain drugs, that can also be detected with the help of changing in the conduction system through ECG. Now the blood vessels. There are three types of blood vessels. Arteries. Arteries break down into arterioles. Arterioles then break down into capillaries. Capillaries are the sites where exchange of everything takes place between the cell and the blood. And then capillaries fuse to form venules. Venules then form veins. Veins then come back to the heart. Arteries are the tubes that take the blood away from the heart. They are elastic in nature, have circular smooth muscles. Capillaries are thin-walled blood vessels, and these are the sites where gases exchange and the nutrients, everything that is required to be exchanged between the cell and the blood, it occurs at capillaries. And veins, that breaks up into venules. These are the blood vessels that take the blood back from body to the heart. And veins, they also have valves. Arteries are without valves, but veins, certain veins, they have valves. Now the arteries. Their function is to transport blood away from the heart or to take blood from heart to all parts of the body. And this transportation is due to high blood pressure in the aorta and then in arteries and arterioles. Arteries are elastic in nature. They are muscular and thick-walled. They can dilate, or their diameter can be increased, and they can constrict. Their diameter can be decreased, due to which a pulse is generated. And arteries are usually red in color due to high oxygen present in the arterial blood. The wall of the artery consists of three layers or tunic. Outer one is tunica adventitia, which is made up of a type of connective tissue that is fibrous connective tissue, which consists of fibers of elastic and collagen. Number two is tunica media. Tunica media is made up of circular smooth muscles, this one. And in case of artery, tunica media is the thickest layer, consists of number of layers of circular smooth muscles. Innermost is tunica intima. It consists of a single layer of squamous endothelial cells and also elastic fibers, which are composed of elastin. Squamous means flattened cells. Epithelial, endothelial are epithelial cells. They are endothelial cells because they line the internal lumen of the blood vessels. So the blood vessels, they are composed of three layers or tunics. Tunica adventitia, which is the outermost. It is made up of connective tissue. In case of artery, it is a fibrous connective tissue. Middle one is tunica media. Tunica media is made up of circular smooth muscles. In case of artery, it is made up of one or two or maybe more layers of circular smooth muscles, and the innermost is made up of elastic fibers, as well as the inner lining is made up of squamous endothelial cells. Aorta, which is the major vessel that emerges from the heart, is 23 millimeter in diameter, and the arterioles are 0.2 mm in diameter. Capillaries, as you can see in the figure, they are the smallest vessels, and they provide a link between the arterioles to venules. Aorta breaks up into arteries, arteries break up into arterioles, arterioles then break up into capillaries, which are made up of single layer of cells, and capillaries then fuse to form venules, venules fuse to form veins, veins form major vena cava, and which then drain blood into the heart. So all the exchange, including the exchange of gases, occur at the level of capillaries. The wall of capillaries are very thin, made up of single layer of cells. So the single layer allow the exchange of gases and nutrients and everything that is required to be exchanged between the blood and the cells, or where these capillaries are present. These are the figures that shows the capillaries. Capillaries comprise only single layer of endothelial cells, as you can see in this figure, and the size of capillary is usually from 7 to 9 micrometer in diameter, and they are usually 1 mm long or 1 millimeter long. Blood cells flow through the most of the capillaries in a single row or in a single file, as you can see in this figure. The blood cells, they move as a single file through the capillary. This allows the maximum exchange between the blood and the neighboring cells. As in this figure, you can see that oxygen and the nutrients, they diffuse from blood out of the capillaries into the cells, or in the cells present in the neighborhood of this capillary, and carbon dioxide and waste from the cells then diffuse back into the blood, which is then carried back to the lungs and then to the heart. Third vessels are veins. Their function is to carry deoxygenated blood back to the heart. Some of the vessels, some of the veins, they have valves. Arteries are without valves, but some of the veins which carry blood, especially from lower part of the body towards the heart, they have valves. And veins, they can store, or they can have 65% to 70% of the body's total blood volume. Usually veins are darker in color. Arteries are usually present in the deeper part of the body, and veins are present just below the skin, or they are superficial, and they are dark in color due to the carbon dioxide content is high in the blood of the veins. And in the veins, the blood pressure is less as compared to the blood pressure in the arteries. Just like arteries, veins are also made up of, or the walls of the veins are also made up of 3 layers. Tunica adventitia, which is the outermost layer. It is made up of collagenous connective tissue, or the connective tissue that is rich in collagen fibers. Middle one is tunica media. It is also made up of a layer of circular smooth muscles, which all have some collagen fibers also and some elastic fibers. But in case of vein, as you can see in this figure, the tunica media is very thin. It is thick, made up of 2 or 3 layers of circular muscles in case of artery, but in case of vein, it is very thin. And the innermost, just like the artery, is tunica intima. It is made up of endothelial cells, a single layer of endothelial cells, and a very thin layer of elastic fibers. Venules are approximately 40 to 50 micrometer in diameter. Now the circulation of blood. Arteries, as you can see, that they are the vessels that carry blood from heart to all parts of the body. When the ventricles contract, blood is pushed or pumped into aorta, which is one of the major blood vessels, and aorta then breaks up into capillaries and it moves towards the different parts of the body. Arteries break up into smaller vessels, arterioles, Arterioles then break up into capillaries, and capillaries are made up of single layer of endothelial cells. These are the sites where exchange of everything takes place between the blood and the neighboring tissues. Capillaries then fuse to form venules, venules fuse to form veins, veins fuse to form a major vessel, that is vena cava. Vena cava then drains the blood into the heart. This is a figure that shows the layers or tunics of the arteries, veins, as well as the capillaries. You can see that in the artery, outermost is tunica adventitia, made up of connective tissues. Middle one is tunica media, interior, and the innermost, which lines the lumen of the blood vessel, it is the tunica intima, made up of endothelial cells. Same is in the case of vein. Outermost is tunica adventitia, made up of connective tissue. Middle one is tunica media, made up of smooth muscles, circular smooth muscles. Innermost is made up of endothelial cells that line the lumen of the vein, and that is tunica intima. But the difference is that in case of vein, tunica media is thin, but in case of artery, the tunica media is thick, made up of many layers of circular smooth muscles. Now the valves in the veins. There are some veins which are usually larger than 2 mm in diameter. They have valves. Valves actually allow the flow of blood only in one direction. Valves prevents the flow of blood in the opposite direction, and valves are present only in those vessels which are coming from the lower part of the body. As you can see in the figure, these vein is coming from the leg. So skeletal muscles actually that surrounds these veins, when they contract and relax, due to this contraction and relaxation, they help in the opening and closing of the valves. As you can see that when the skeletal muscle in the leg, it contracts, valve is open, so the blood moves towards the heart, and when the muscles are contracting, the valves are closed to prevent the backward flow of blood. And valves are present in the veins in the limb region as well as veins in the abdominal region, but there are no valves in the veins which are coming from upper part of the body, because the veins which are emerging or which are coming from the lower part of the body, the blood in these veins, it have to move against the force of gravity, and the blood pressure in the vein is low as compared to the blood pressure in the arteries. That's why veins, they have valves, or valves are required. So valves, they help the veins to overcome the force of gravity. Semilunar valves are present in it, and they are regulated, or their opening and closing is regulated by muscular contraction. Now the vasodilation and vasoconstriction. Vaso means vessels and dilation means increase in diameter of the blood vessel, and vasoconstriction is decrease in the diameter of blood vessel. Increase or decrease in blood flow through blood vessels is regulated by contraction or relaxation of the smooth muscles present in the tunica media. That is called vasoconstriction when there is a decrease in diameter due to this contraction, and vasodilation when there is increase in the diameter due to relaxation of smooth muscles in the tunica media. Vasoconstriction is also caused by some hormones, that is norepinephrine, and to some extent by the epinephrine as well. Norepinephrine and epinephrine, these are the hormones secreted by adrenal medulla. Adrenal medulla is a part of adrenal gland which is present just above the kidney. Some substances which are called kinins, these are vasodilator, or these chemicals can increase the diameter of the vessels. They are the powerful vasodilators, and they are produced actually in the blood and tissue fluids and also in some organs. Very common example of these kinin is histamine, which is also produced by some white blood cells. And most of the prostaglandins are the chemicals which are produced by the damaged tissues, and these prostaglandins help in the healing of the cells and tissues. So most of the prostaglandins are also vasodilator in nature, means they can increase the diameter of the blood vessels, but some of the prostaglandins are also vasoconstrictor, that they can constrict the diameter of the blood vessels. This is a figure that shows the vasoconstriction and the vasodilation. You can see that in vasoconstriction there is a constriction, or there is a decrease in the diameter of the blood vessels. Here capillaries are shown, but in this case there is a vasodilation, increase in the diameter of the blood capillaries, due to which what happens when there is increase in the diameter or when there is a vasodilation, exchange can easily take place, especially the capillaries or the blood vessels which are present just beneath the surface of the skin. So that in this figure you can see that due to this vasodilation, the heat which is produced due to metabolic activities inside the body, this metabolic heat is lost due to vasodilation or due to increase in the diameter of the blood vessels to the outer environment, to bring back the temperature of the body back to the normal. In case of vasoconstriction, you see that the exchange between the blood vessels and the outer environment is almost stopped, so that there is no or very less exchange takes place. This usually occurs in the case of heat during the winters, when there is less exchange or less heat is lost from the body to the environment. Now the capillaries, or the role of precapillary sphincter in regulating the flow of blood through capillaries. Arterioles are the smallest vessels of the arteries. They then break up into capillaries, and at the start of capillaries there is a sphincter that is called precapillary sphincter, and arterioles, they break up into capillary through a metarteriole. And at the start of capillary there is a sphincter that is called precapillary sphincter. This sphincter regulates the flow of blood in the capillary, and sphincter can close and can open to regulate the movement of blood from the arteriole into the metarteriole and then into the capillary. And metarteriole also connects to the venule through thoroughfare channel. So metarteriole plus thoroughfare channel, they also make a vascular shunt between the arteriole and the venule. Vascular shunt means a direct contact or direct connection between the arteriole and venule without capillaries. These are the capillaries, which at the start have precapillary sphincter. So the sphincter can open and close to regulate the movement of blood into the capillaries. This is another figure that shows the arteriole. It then break up into metarteriole. Metarteriole are the vessels from which the capillaries originate at the start or at the base of the capillary. This is a precapillary sphincter. And metarteriole then passes into a thoroughfare channel, and thoroughfare channel along with the capillaries form venules. And venules then fuse to form veins. Veins then form vena cava, which then drains blood into the heart. Vasomotion, it is the cyclic opening and closing of the precapillary sphincter for the movement of blood into the capillary from the arteriole. It is called vasomotion. It is actually the movement of blood into the capillary through this precapillary sphincter, or due to opening and closing of precapillary sphincter is a cyclic process. At a time only, certain blood is allowed to move in the capillary so that maximum exchange takes place. Then it is closed and then open again. This is for some seconds, and that is in a cyclic form, so that is called vasomotion. Now the next topic is vascular pathway, the pathway of many different vessels in the body. Cardiovascular system or vascular pathway usually includes two major circuits in human body. One is pulmonary circulation and the second is systemic circulation. Or the first one is pulmonary circuit and the second is systemic circuit. As you can see that pulmonary circulation is that when the blood from the heart, and this blood is deoxygenated blood, it is pumped to the lungs, and inside the lungs this blood is purified or oxygenated, and this oxygenated blood comes back to the heart, and then heart pumps this blood or this oxygenated blood through systemic circulation to all parts of the body, and then from all parts of the body deoxygenated blood then comes back through veins into the heart. So that is systemic circulation, where the heart pumps oxygenated blood to all parts of the body, and pulmonary circulation is that where heart pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and then from lungs oxygenated blood reaches back or comes back to the heart to be pumped to all parts of the body. This is another figure that shows the cardiovascular system or the two types of circulation. This is pulmonary circulation and this one is the systemic circulation. In systemic circulation you can see that from the heart blood is pumped to all vital organs or all body parts, and then deoxygenated blood from all these body parts comes back to the heart, and this deoxygenated blood is then pumped to the lungs, and then from lungs after oxygenation it comes back to the heart. Now the first one is pulmonary circulation. In pulmonary circulation you can see that these are the two auricles. This is right auricle, this one is left auricle. This is right ventricle and this one is left ventricle. And in the previous lecture you learned that right part of the heart, it receives oxygenated blood, deoxygenated blood, and left part receives oxygenated blood. So the blood after oxygenation, or the blood which is coming from the lungs, it is carried through pulmonary veins, and pair of pulmonary veins from each lung, it enter into left atrium, and these veins they open through common pore or common opening into the left atrium. When left atrium is filled with this oxygenated blood, it contracts and the oxygenated blood is pumped into left ventricle, and when this left ventricle contracts, this oxygenated blood is pumped through aorta to all parts of the body. And at the same time, the deoxygenated blood which comes through the vena cava, that is inferior and superior vena cava, it is collected into the right part of the heart, or right atrium is filled with deoxygenated blood, and then it is sent to the right ventricle due to the contraction of right auricle. Right ventricle then pump this blood to the lungs for oxygenation, and this is pumped through the pulmonary trunk, or another major vessel arises from the right ventricle, that is called pulmonary aorta or pulmonary trunk, which then divides into two arteries, right pulmonary artery and left pulmonary artery. Right pulmonary artery enters into right lung and left pulmonary artery enters into left lung. So these arteries then supply this deoxygenated blood to the lungs for oxygenation, or in simple words, for purification. So this circuit is called pulmonary circuit, and the circulation of blood in it is called pulmonary circulation.
Circulation does not directly provide oxygen to the tissues. Pulmonary circulation functions only to bring blood into close contact with the alveoli of the lungs so that gas exchange or external respiration can occur. The oxygenated blood returning from the body tissues enters the pulmonary circulation as it is pumped from the right side of the heart into the large pulmonary trunk. The pulmonary trunk splits into the left and right pulmonary arteries. The left pulmonary artery enters the left lung, and the right pulmonary artery enters the right lung. Pulmonary arteries continue branching until they form pulmonary capillaries that surround and cling to the alveoli. The exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place at this junction, termed the respiratory membrane or air-blood barrier. This gas exchange is the process of external respiration discussed earlier. Pulmonary capillaries drain into small veins that join to form two pulmonary veins that exit each lung. The four pulmonary veins complete the circuit by delivering freshly oxygenated blood to the left side of the heart for distribution to the tissues.
Second pathway is systemic pathway. Systemic circuit or systemic circulation includes all the arteries and veins. The major or the largest artery is aorta that emerges from the left ventricle, and major veins include superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. Superior vena cava is that which drains the blood or collects the blood from upper part of the body, and inferior vena cava is that which collects the blood from lower part of the body. Aorta then breaks up into arteries and arterioles, which then supply blood to all parts of the body. And arterioles break up into capillaries. Capillaries then fuse to form venules. Venules form veins, and veins fuse to form inferior vena cava from the lower part of the body and superior vena cava from the lower part of the body. So these both superior and inferior vena cava open into right atrium. From the right atrium, blood is pumped into the right ventricle. So the systemic circulation is that where through aorta, which emerges from the left ventricle, it supplies it to all parts of the body, and then veins brings back deoxygenated blood and drains into the heart through superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. Now the third one is coronary circulation. Coronary circulation is the blood circulation due to coronary arteries and then veins to the cells and tissues of the heart. Heart is made up of myocardial cells and connective tissues as well, or it is made up of cells and tissues. So these cells and tissues also require oxygen and nutrients. So this oxygen and nutrient is supplied by a circulation or by a circuit that is called coronary circuit, and circulation is called coronary circulation. Coronary blood vessels or arteries emerges from the base of the aorta, which emerges from the heart, and these coronary arteries then break up into coronary arterioles. Two coronary arteries, right coronary artery and left coronary artery, arises from the base of the aorta, breaks up into arterioles. Arterioles then break up into capillaries, and capillaries then fuse to form veins, and these veins are called cardiac veins. And these cardiac veins converge or fuse to form coronary sinus channel, this one. That coronary sinus channel then enters into the heart through an opening which is present into the right atrium. Coronary sinus is present on the posterior side of the heart. As you can see that right coronary artery and left coronary artery emerges from the base of the aorta, divide into arterioles, arterioles into capillaries. These capillaries fuse to form venules, and these venules then make cardiac veins, and these cardiac veins open into this coronary sinus. Coronary sinus then drains into right atrium. And you can see that coronary artery as well as the veins, they are parallel to each other, or they run parallel on the heart and supplying nutrients, oxygen to the cells and tissues of the heart, and in return waste and carbon dioxide is bring back through veins of the heart back to the heart to be purified or for oxygenation.
The coronary heart arteries. The heart muscle, like every other muscle in the body, needs its own supply of oxygen in order to survive and function properly. Although the heart chambers contain blood, the heart muscle derives no nourishment from this blood. The heart muscle receives its blood supply from its own arterial system. This blood supply is known as the coronary arteries. The coronary arteries arise at the beginning of the aorta, the main blood vessel leaving the heart. The two main coronary arteries, the left main coronary artery and the right coronary artery, branch out like a tree. They divide many times into smaller arteries, covering the surface of the heart muscle. They supply the muscle with oxygenated and nutrient-rich blood. The left main coronary artery quickly divides into the left anterior descending artery, LAD, which travels across the front of the heart, and the circumflex artery, which runs round the back of the heart. These, together with the right coronary artery, form the main heart arteries. The size and shape of the